I used to think love had to be big and forever, like the stories in books I read at the library. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe love doesn't have to last a long time to be real. Sometimes it just needs to be felt, even if only for a short moment. I didn't know this until that autumn, when I was 16, and someone stepped softly into my life. My name is Mia. I was 16 years old when this story began. I lived in a small town near Boston called Willow Creek. It was a quiet place with trees that turned golden in the fall, little shops on the main street, and one big school where all the students in town went. I had lived there my whole life. Everyone knew everyone, but still, I often felt alone. I wasn't popular. I didn't like crowds or loud voices. I liked books, quiet music, and the sound of wind through the leaves. At school, I didn't talk much. I sat in the second row near the window and spent my breaks in the library. Other girls in my class wore bright clothes and talked about boys. I wore soft colors and wrote poems in a notebook I kept in my bag. That year, something changed. We got a new literature teacher. His name was Mr. Carter. He was only 25, but he seemed older in the way he spoke and walked. He had dark brown hair, calm green eyes, and glasses that made him look thoughtful. He always carried a brown leather bag and wore clean, simple clothes. Sometimes he wore a soft gray sweater that made his eyes look even more gentle. On the first day, he walked into our class. The room went quiet. All the girls noticed him. They whispered and laughed. One girl dropped her pen 3 times just so he would pick it up. But Mr. Carter didn't change his face. He only smiled politely and started the lesson. He spoke clearly. He read poems like they were alive. He didn't just teach us. He made us feel something. I didn't try to get his attention. I just listened. And slowly, something in me began to change. Mr. Carter became my favorite teacher very quickly. Every time he spoke, the room felt calmer. His voice was soft, but strong. He didn't just ask us to read a story. He helped us understand it. He told us why a writer chose certain words. He asked us how the story made us feel. No teacher had ever done that before. I started to care more about my schoolwork, especially in his class. I always did my best on his assignments. I read every page carefully. I wrote slowly, trying to make each word feel true. Sometimes, after class, he would return my paper with a small note on the side. One time he wrote, "Mia, your thoughts are beautiful. Never stop writing." I held that paper in my hands for a long time. I read the sentence again and again. No one had ever said something like that to me. I didn't talk to him outside of class. I didn't ask silly questions or try to make him laugh like the other girls did. But I started dressing a little nicer on the days we had his class. I brushed my hair more carefully I wore a small silver necklace that used to belong to my mother. I didn't want to impress him. I just wanted to feel better about myself. I hoped he would notice me, not in the way the other girls wanted, but for who I really was. Sometimes I caught him looking at me during class. Not often, just a quick glance. Maybe when I answered a question or shared a thought. His eyes were kind. When he said, "Well done, Mia," I felt warm inside for the rest of the day. At home, I started thinking about him. I wondered what he did after school. Did he live alone? Did he read books in the evening like I did? Did he listen to music? I didn't know, but I wanted to know. One afternoon, something happened that I will never forget. It was raining. Most students had already gone home. I stayed behind to return a book to the library. As I walked past the stairs near the back exit, I heard a sound, a heavy thud. I turned and saw Mr. Carter lying on the ground. He had slipped. Without thinking, I ran to him. He was trying to sit up, but I could see pain on his face. His right hand was holding his leg, and his glasses had fallen a few feet away. Rain was still falling, light but cold, and his clothes were wet. "Mr. Carter," I said, kneeling beside him, "are you okay?" He looked at me and gave a small, tight smile. "I think I twisted my ankle," he said. I slipped on the last step. I picked up his glasses and gave them to him. "Can you move?" He shook his head slowly, not without help. I looked around. The school was nearly empty. The parking lot was quiet. I took a breath and said, "Wait here. I'll get someone." But as I started to stand, he gently grabbed my sleeve. "Don't run. I'm fine. Just stay with me for a moment." So I sat down beside him. The ground was cold and wet, but I didn't care. For a minute, we just sat there. Then I said, "Should I call the office or someone from the staff?" He nodded. "Yes, but thank you, Mia. You came at the right time." His words made my heart beat faster. I stood up and walked quickly to the office. A janitor was still there, and he helped call for assistance. Soon, one of the older teachers came out with a small cart and helped Mr. Carter into it. I watched them roll him away, his face still calm but tired. The next day, he wasn't at school. Our substitute said he was resting at home. The day felt strange without him. I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about his fall, how he looked at me, how he said my name. When he returned a few days later, he was walking slowly with a cane. The class clapped quietly. He smiled and said, "Thank you, everyone. I'm walking like an old man now, but I'll survive." I smiled too, and for a second, our eyes met. I looked away quickly. From that day, something between us changed. He was still the same teacher, kind, patient, fair. But I felt that he looked at me differently. Not often, not for long, but sometimes when I was writing, I would feel his eyes on me, and when I looked up, he would turn away as if nothing had happened. One day after class, he gave me back a story I wrote. He didn't just say, "Good work this time." He looked at me and said, "You have something special, Mia. You feel the world in a deep way. Don't lose that." My cheeks turned warm. I said thank you, but I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell him that he helped me feel seen, that when I looked at him, I didn't feel small or strange. I felt important, but I didn't say it. I was just a student, and he was my teacher, and he never crossed that line. Still, I started waking up every day with a little hope in my heart. I wore my favorite sweater on literature days. I brushed my hair slowly. I checked my smile in the mirror. I wasn't trying to be pretty. I just wanted to be someone he could remember, someone he could care about, even if he never said it, even if nothing ever happened. Mr. Carter returned to teaching after his fall, but something felt different. He walked slower, leaned on a cane, and didn't move around the classroom as much. Yet his voice stayed calm. His way of teaching stayed the same. Still gentle, still thoughtful, maybe even a little softer. I kept watching him, not in a loud or obvious way like some of the other girls. I just paid attention. More than before, I started noticing little things. How he always paused before reading the last line of a poem. How he ran his fingers over the edge of his desk when thinking. How he smiled when someone got an answer right, even if it was a small one. I didn't know if he remembered that I had helped him when he fell. He had thanked me, yes, but it wasn't just about the words. It was the way he looked at me afterward, quietly, kindly, almost like I was more than just a student in the second row. It was a feeling, not a fact, and feelings were hard to trust. Still, I held on to them. Every day before his class, I found myself checking my reflection a little longer in the mirror. I would fix my hair, smooth down my shirt, and wear the silver necklace again and again. It wasn't for him, not exactly. It was for me, for how I felt when I walked into that room. I wanted to be someone he remembered, someone he might wonder about, even just a little. He started noticing my writing more. I could feel it. When he handed my papers back, he sometimes wrote notes in the margins. Short lines like, "You understood this deeply," or "Your voice is strong." Those words stayed with me longer than anything else anyone said all day. But outside of class, he never said much to me. He didn't stop in the hallway to talk. He didn't ask me personal questions. He kept his distance, always polite but never close. And that made it harder because every small moment felt like it meant something, but I was never sure. Sometimes I caught him looking at me. Once, during a quiet moment in class, I looked up from my book and found his eyes already on me. He looked away quickly, pretending to fix something on his desk. My heart beat faster the rest of the lesson. At night, I would lie in bed thinking about those small moments. I would write in my notebook lines about silence, about spaces between people, about how close two hearts can be without touching. I never showed anyone those pages. I didn't even read them twice. I just needed to get the feelings out. One Friday afternoon, I stayed behind after class to pick up a book I had dropped. Everyone else had left. Mr. Carter was still at his desk, writing something in his planner. I thought about saying something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I stood quietly and waited for him to notice me. After a moment, he looked up and smiled gently. "Did you forget something?" he asked. "No," I said. "Just thank you for the lesson." He looked at me for a second longer than usual. Then he nodded. "You're welcome, Mia. Have a good weekend." I walked out slowly, wishing he had said more. Sometimes I wondered if he liked me, not in the way I liked him. Maybe not that much, but enough to see me as more than a student. Enough to remember me after the school year ended. Still, I never let myself believe too much, because even if he did care, he was my teacher, and I was just a girl with a quiet voice and a notebook full of hopes. So I kept everything inside. I listened in class. I read the books. I wrote carefully. I smiled when he praised my work. And every day, I told myself not to dream too far. Because dreams are soft things, and sometimes they don't last. But still, I hoped. The last few weeks of school arrived faster than I expected. The hallways were filled with noise, with students talking about summer plans, class parties, and graduation. But inside me, everything felt still, like time was slowing down. Mr. Carter announced during class one morning that he would not be returning next year. He had accepted a new teaching position in another state. He said it softly, like he didn't want to say it at all. Some students murmured and looked surprised. A few even looked disappointed. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I stared down at my notebook and tried not to let my face show what my heart felt. My hands were cold. My chest felt tight. He was leaving, and I hadn't told him anything. I hadn't even said what he meant to me. The days that followed were quiet for me. I still came to class early. I still paid attention, but a small part of me had already started saying goodbye. I knew it would happen. Teachers leave, people move on, but that didn't make it easier. On the last day of school, our class was full of noise. People were laughing, writing messages in yearbooks, hugging each other. Mr. Carter sat at his desk, smiling and watching. But I could tell his smile didn't reach his eyes. When the bell rang, everyone stood up quickly. Some students went to shake his hand or say goodbye. I stayed in my seat, waiting until the room was almost empty. Then, when the last person walked out, he looked at me and said softly, "Mia, could you stay for a minute?" My heart jumped. I nodded and stood slowly. The room was quiet now, just the two of us. He walked around to the front of the desk and leaned against it gently, holding a small envelope in his hand. He looked at me with that calm, careful look I had seen so many times before. "I wanted to say goodbye properly," he said. I nodded, unable to speak. He looked down at the envelope in his hand. "This is for you," he said. "It's just a letter. Nothing big, just something I wanted to leave behind." I took the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Then he looked at me again, really looked. Not like a teacher, not like someone who was trying to hide something, but like a person who had carried a truth for a long time. "I want you to know," he said slowly, "you've been more important to me than you'll ever know." I looked at him, confused, hopeful, scared. "You helped me," he said, "not just that day when I fell, but every day. Your presence, your words, your kindness. You reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place." My heart was racing. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. He took a step closer, then stopped. His voice was soft, steady. "I've tried to keep my distance because it was right. You were my student. I had a responsibility to do the right thing." I nodded slowly, my eyes filling with tears. "But now," he continued, "I'm leaving, and I don't want to go without telling you the truth." He paused, searching my face. "I care about you, Mia. I noticed everything. Your writing, your quiet strength, the way you see the world." A tear slipped down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. For a moment, he just stood there, as if deciding something in his heart. Then, gently, he stepped forward. He leaned down slightly and pressed his forehead softly against mine. It wasn't a kiss, but it felt deeper, like an acknowledgement of everything we couldn't say. The world seemed to go quiet. I closed my eyes and felt the warmth of the moment, the sadness, the gratitude, the love that didn't need to be spoken aloud. He pulled away, smiling faintly. "Goodbye, Mia," he whispered, and then he walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, holding his letter close to my chest and carrying a memory that would stay with me forever. I stood alone in the empty classroom, holding the letter in my hand, my heart still beating fast, my eyes full of tears I didn't want to hide. I didn't go home right away that day. I sat on the bench outside the school building, the one near the tall oak tree, and held the letter in my hand. I didn't open it yet. I wasn't ready. I just sat there, watching students laugh and take pictures, their backpacks slung over their shoulders, their futures wide open. But mine felt smaller now, quieter. Mr. Carter was gone, just like that. The touch had been soft, so soft it could have been a dream, but I felt it still, even hours later, like it had stayed with me, in my heart, in my chest, in the places words couldn't reach. That night, I finally opened the letter. It was handwritten in blue ink. The first line simply said, "For Mia." He wrote about the class, about how proud he was of the students. But then the words became more personal. He wrote about me, how he noticed my quiet effort, how he saw the care I put into my work, how my presence had brought him peace on days when he felt lost. He wrote, "You reminded me of what matters. You helped me stay kind in a world that doesn't always reward kindness." Near the end, he added, "I don't know where life will take either of us, but I believe you'll do beautiful things. And if you ever doubt yourself, just remember, someone out there already saw the light in you." I cried reading that line. The days after school ended were strange. Summer began, but nothing felt bright. I stayed home most of the time. I read books, took slow walks through the park, and sometimes sat by the window, just watching the sky. I thought about writing to him, but I didn't know where to send the letter. He hadn't left an address, and even if he had, what could I say? I wanted to see him again. I wanted to talk, to ask him what he meant by that moment, if it was real, if it meant anything more. But the silence after his goodbye made everything harder. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, I heard from one of the other teachers that he had moved overseas to teach at an international school. A new life, a new place, far away. I told myself I should be happy for him, that it was a good opportunity, that maybe he was finally doing what he'd always dreamed of. But still, I missed him. I wrote letters I never sent. I filled pages in my notebook with thoughts I would never say out loud. I kept remembering our last conversation, playing it in my head again and again. I tried to hold on to his words, but memory fades slowly, quietly, like light at the end of the day. My friends didn't know. No one did. I didn't tell anyone about the moment we shared, the letter, or how I felt. It was something I carried alone, like a soft secret wrapped inside my chest. One day in late August, I went back to the school to return a few books. The classroom where Mr. Carter used to teach was locked. I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door. It looked the same, but everything felt different. He wasn't coming back. I knew that now. I walked home that day slowly. The town was warm and golden, full of late summer light. People were outside talking, laughing, living. But I stayed quiet because even though nothing terrible had happened, it still felt like I had lost something. Not just him, but the version of me that believed we might have more time. A year has passed since that summer. I finished school. I started college in a nearby city. Life moved forward, like it always does. But sometimes, when I'm walking to class or reading alone in a cafe, I think of him. Not in a sad way, not anymore. just in a soft, distant way, like remembering a dream that once felt real. I never saw Mr. Carter again. I never heard from him. He became part of a chapter in my life that quietly closed, without noise, without answers. But that chapter still lives inside me. People say first love is often foolish, but mine wasn't. It was quiet, it was gentle, it was real, in the way that only two careful hearts can feel. And maybe it was never meant to last. Maybe it came only to show me something I didn't know about myself. Before I met him, I never believed I could be seen. Not like that. He saw my thoughts, my silence, my effort. He made me feel like I mattered. Not because I was loud or popular or funny, but because I was simply me. Sometimes, when I write now, I hear his voice in my mind. The way he read poems aloud, the way he said, "Well done, Mia," when I got something right. His words still guide me. His kindness still lights a small corner of who I am. I don't regret anything. Not the feelings, not the goodbye, not even the heartbreak that followed, because he was my teacher. And also, somehow, my first love. I don't know where he is now. Maybe he's walking through a new school in a different country. Maybe he still carries that brown leather bag. Maybe sometimes, when he looks at a quiet student in the second row, he remembers me. I hope he does. But even if he doesn't, I'll remember him. Not because of what we could have had, but because of what we did have. Brief moments, careful glances, one touch, and a goodbye that shapes something inside me. Love doesn't always need to stay to be real. Sometimes it just needs to be felt. Even once,